Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte
under those categories, and I think
yes, but sleep surely does, right? You can't be safe and sanitary or safe as a human being if you can't sleep.
Well,
and you said in your briefs it doesn't say anything about sleeping, so therefore there's nothing in here about being able to sleep.
I think the concern there is, Your Honor, the court finding that sleep, for example, is relevant to a finding of no safe and sanitary conditions is one thing, but the ultimate conclusion is safe and sanitary is a singular category in the agreement, and it was one has to assume left that way and not enumerated by the parties because either the parties couldn't reach agreement on how to enumerate that, or that it was left to the agencies to determine.
Or it was relatively obvious, and it's at least obvious enough so that if you're putting people into a crowded room to sleep on a concrete floor with an aluminum foil blanket on top of them, that doesn't comply with the agreement. I mean, it may be that they don't get super thread counts Egyptian linens. I get that. But the testimony that the district judge believed was it's really cold. In fact, it gets colder when we complain about it being cold. We're supposed to sleep crowded with the lights on all night long, and all you do put us on is the concrete floor with an aluminum blanket. I mean, I understand at some outer boundary there may be some definitional difficulty, but no one would argue that this is secure and sanitary, safe and sanitary. Or at least I don't think you're arguing that, are you?
Your Honor, I think what I'm arguing is that the way that the district court reached the conclusion was to say these specific items, and I think I will acknowledge I think sleep is the more difficult end of what I'm arguing.
We actually have an opinion that says that it's unconstitutional to make homeless people not sleep, right?
Correct, Your Honor. And I think, I do know, and I think that's part of our point, though, is that we're not talking about the constitutional standard here, and we're not talking about what CBP has implemented more broadly as its own TEDS policy. We're talking about... Are
you arguing seriously that you do not read the agreement as requiring you to do something other than what I've just described? Cold all night long, lights on all night long, sleep on the concrete, and you get an aluminum foil blanket. Are you saying that that's okay?
And too crowded to lie down, which they also said.
I find that inconceivable that the government would say that that is safe and sanitary.
I think what I'm arguing, Your Honor, is that I don't believe that the district court made the finding in the way that Your Honor just detailed it.
Everything I just said comes right out of the district court order.
I think our concern is that the district court really looked at a condition, and again, as I said, I think sleep is clearly at the sort of one end of her findings. I think we also look at...
Which is your strongest argument then?
Well, I think what I would go to is when you start enumerating, for example, specific hygiene items, and the way that was done is that the court sort of enumerated these and say these fall under the rubric, these fall in the category of what could be required.
Again, it wasn't perfume soap, it was soap. It wasn't, high-class milled soap, it was soap. And that sounds, that's part of safe and sanitary. Are you disagreeing with that?
what I'm disagreeing with is that the court ultimately concluded these things would fall under here, and then simply by not providing them, you have violated that tenet of the agreement. And I also would note that in that particular...
What do you... Granted that the decree doesn't have a list of items that has to be supplied in order to be sanitary. What's a reasonable, in your eyes, what's a reasonable definition of sanitary that the court could enforce?
Well, I think what I would ask is, what I would say is I would ask that the court find that the conditions were not safe and sanitary. What the court found is these things fall within that category, and by not providing them, that's an automatic breach of the agreement.
Well, I don't know if it's automatic, but to me it's more like Judge Fletcher says, it's within everybody's common understanding that, if you don't have a toothbrush, if you don't have soap, if you don't have a blanket, it's not safe and sanitary. Well, wouldn't everybody agree to that? Do you agree to that?
Well, I think there's fair reason to find that those things may be part of safe and sanitary.
Maybe are a part.
It is Friday, the 21st of June of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Well, folks, the French 77s have been mixed and poured here in this virtual world of ours, and feel free to imbibe at your pleasure, because that's what it's all about. Pleasure, folks. Don't drink the French 77s for appealing or appeasing a morose state. It may not uplift as you would hope. Though the French 77 be an uplifting cocktail, in fact, one of the most balanced cocktails in the world, so how uplifting is that? One too many, and usually that's two. Two of those, and you might need a little help navigating this material, temporal world we are in. So do take care, but do enjoy also. Speaking of enjoyment, it looks like the Oregon GOP has called in the Oath Keepers and the 3%ers to brown shirt their way into what they want. That's right, and what they want is they don't want to vote on a climate change bill. So they're willing to commit armed sedition and insurrection to keep from voting on a climate change bill. We're not talking about sending in the jackboots and taking their guns. We're not saying even sending in the jackboots and forcing their kids to get vaccinated. What we're talking about is sending the Oregon State Police to bring them back to the state capitol to vote on a bill. Vote no or vote yes, but you have to vote. This is not the first time a governor or any politician has called in the police to round up some lawmakers to vote. It's okay when Republican governors do it, and they do it quite often, I must say. But every right-winger hates Kate Brown. She's a woman, maybe she might even be a lesbo. That's the worst kind. They are telling us men how to live our lives, and we're not going to take it. And they won't. Nice little democracy we got there. Be sad if someone came and broke it. Broke it? Are you kidding me? We're trying to hold this thing together with duct tape. Okay, I don't want to hear another word out of the GOP or a right-winger's mouth about law and order again. Ever. Of course, I said that back when I was 19 because everybody could see, well, not everybody, obviously, but the people I ran with could see it was all a hypocritical ploy to appeal to the most base level of the most base people who happen to vote. Think of all those that don't vote. Oh my God, what kind of country and society do we live in? Well, we could be living in a grand experiment, a great experiment, in which equal rights are conferred to all. We have to get over, this is the other thing, how to talk to a conservative. When a conservative hears, equal rights, they don't think about all boats rising together. They think about something being taken from them. So, how to talk to a conservative is to allay their fears that by allowing someone just to have equal protection and due process under law means that they are not losing something. Everybody is gaining something. How are they gaining? Well, I would probably then promote the idea of, tranquility. You don't have to worry about people wanting to take something from you because, everybody's equal of sorts. That's where we're at. The modern GOP here in Oregon has decided to call in the brown shirts, former cops and military personnel, just like the reports out of the Department of Defense back in the day said, to push a political agenda at odds with the democratic process. With guns. I don't want to hear anything about law and order. These people need to be put in jail. Will the Republican Party censor them? No, because they've already hired the Proud Boys in this state. The Republican committee in this state has hired the Proud Boys to be their security. Yeah, brown shirts. And I gotta say, when you speak to a few people here in the state, sure are a lot of good Germans. I presume it's the same elsewhere. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, at the top, that was a hearing in front of a 3-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit who scoffed at a Department of Justice lawyer's argument that detainees at the border don't need soap or toothbrushes, and they can just sleep on the bare floor. It's concrete. They won't sink through it. It's okay. It's safe. Okay. The judges were not having it. Not one bit, as you could hear. On the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe, Trump had to pay up front for his Orlando rally, in which, he announced his 2020 run officially. And that was because he stiffed 10 other cities. Orlando said, you pay up front. Trump's new immigration official has a long record of smearing Muslims, so she's perfectly qualified for the job, obviously. And the Trump administration was sued for withholding documents related to its decision to cancel a 20-year ban on mining in a Minnesota wilderness area. And they want to go for copper. Yeah. Boy, that's really nice. Oh, you've never been around a copper mine? Yeah. The reason for it? People don't live or visit anywhere near a copper mine. After the break, we moved to the chef's table, where Russia began releasing a group of almost 100 captive whales into the wild because detaining them in the country's far east since last year caused an international outcry. And the British Parliament will hold a citizens' assembly on the climate crisis. You know, the fake one, promulgated by the Chinese. Oh, that's only in America that people believe that. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice to the rightish of the page the chat room link monitored by Kelly Link, and thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the page from the chat room link at the bottom of that homepage, which just happens to be at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the link to our Patreon site. And if you've heard this before, I apologize. If you're hearing it for the first time, I apologize. But this is where we make an appeal for funds, because we're unable to do this without you. Though most of the monies come out of our own pockets or wallets, depending on our attire, we would truly be unable to do this without you, because you are our biggest contributor. So that recurring contribution that could, if you could afford a latte type drink once a month and send those funds our way, we not only stretch those dollars beyond all measure, we actually conduct a stretching contest. And we've done this for 8 years of continuous 24/7, 365 Resistance Radio. And we thank you for allowing us to do this and resist as the nation's founders originally intended. Do follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Thank you, Tom, for taking care of that. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, just like it sounds. And also, I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. Look for that on social media, or just go to Daily Co's and look for it there. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found, among every single podcast in the world. And maybe from other universes, for all we know. Indeed. All right, let's get in. Oh, happy summer solstice. First day of summer. Damn right. God, I used to love this as a kid. I could smell the beach. Even when I was an even smaller kid, living in Oregon, and we called it the coast. I could smell the coast. I can smell it right now. Speaking of coast, let's go up to the, or over to the East Coast to, well, I think it's getting fairly muggy in Florida about this time of year. Now, at least. Back in the day, you might have had to wait all the way to July. Lisa Needham from Share Blue Media brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. I assure you, I have not imbibed in any French 77s, virtual or otherwise, yet. Okay. Well, Trump launched his 2020 bid on Tuesday night, but it cost him. Seriously. Trump has stiffed at least 10 cities by refusing to pay local police forces for their time spent providing security and safety at his rallies. Because of that, Orlando, the site of his official 2020 campaign kickoff, demanded that he pay up front. Hey, you got to know the president. You know, some of them you can trust. And in fact, most of them you could, even the scofflaws. Not this guy. Look, it's standard policy in Orlando that venues get paid before their events. Why? Because Orlando is not a fool as a city, or as individuals that make up the city, apparently. Good for them. To their meager credit, the Trump campaign did make the first installment payment of $72,000 on time in early June. They were slated to make another payment on June 10th, but it's not clear yet if they did so. Well, we know this guy. He never pays the full amount. And then he sues you for tens of millions of dollars to make you shut up. The cost of the venue is only a small part of the cost of municipalities when Trump brings his hate-filled rhetoric to town. The Orlando Sentinel reported that the campaign was required to pay $145,771.34. Why don't they just round it to $145,772 or 70? Come on, round. God, I hate that. Okay, 34 cents to use the Amway Center because it's a pyramid scheme. That's why. I get it now. Okay, so they were required to pay that 145 plus grand to use the Amway Center the day of the rally. However, as an Orlando City spokesperson pointed out, there are additional impacts to the area outside of the event venue. And because this is a presidential visit, the spokesperson continued, these costs for police will be absorbed by the local agency. In other words, Trump may have to pay a paltry amount to cities for the use of the actual event spaces, but he doesn't have to pay for the massive police presence required when Trump's right-wing supporters come to town and then try to wreak havoc. And they do. On Tuesday, the Proud Boys, a white supremacist group that has violently attacked people in the past, arrived before the Trump rally. They wanted a confrontation with anti-Trump protesters, but thankfully were stopped by a line of police before they could do so. And it isn't as if the campaign can't afford to pay. Trump raised $30 million for his re-election bid in the first quarter of 2019 alone. Combine that with the money the GOP has raised to keep Trump in office, and the amount jumps to $82 million. And that's not even counting all the largesse he's getting from corrupt leaders from around the world. In this reporter's opinion, just to be clear so that we don't blame Share Blue Media and this reporter, not this reporter, but that reporter, reporting in the true reporting style until I interjected. While Trump stacks up cash, El Paso is waiting for its $470,417. Erie, Pennsylvania is waiting for its $35,129.27. And at least 8 other cities are waiting too. But given Trump's long history of refusing to pay his bills, a practice that well predates his 2016 presidential run, how about since he, was getting money from Daddy? Given all that of his past, these cities will have to wait for, I think the professional term is called, forever. The great Oliver Willis of Share Blue Media brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A recent Trump administration hire to be the public face of U.S. Customs and Border Protection has a history of making bigoted anti-Muslim remarks. Catherine Gorka, the Mind Rios, Gorka. Where have I heard that name before? Who in the vast pantheon of Gorkas could that be? I'm hungry for the result of that question. I am. Well, Catherine Gorka has been chosen to be the new press secretary for Border Protection, an agency within the Department of Homeland Security, where she has been a senior advisor since 2017. But prior to her current role, she was a regular right-wing pundit who repeatedly attacked Muslims. The Muslim community in this country really isn't working with us to prevent terrorism, Gorka told right-wing radio host Sandy Rios in 2016. That should be disturbing to everyone. Gorka also claimed that a very small percentage of Muslims in America have helped law enforcement root out terrorism. See, only a small amount, because most of them are like really terrorists. In a May 2016 appearance on Fox News, Gorka reiterated her attack and said, leaders in the Muslim community have not proven helpful in helping law enforcement to fight homegrown terrorism. Gorka has previously served as a national security advisor to Republican Senator Ted Cruz when he unsuccessfully ran for president in 2016, and has been a contributor to Breitbart. Gorka is married to, wait for it, you'll be shocked, former Trump administration official Sebastian Gorka, a Nazi sympathizer from Hungary and a Fox News contributor. For years, conservatives have fanned the flames of Islamophobia, unjustly alleging that Muslims support terrorism. Trump has been one of the most visible practitioners of this open bigotry. He has pushed for a ban on Muslim travel in the U.S. In 2015, Trump told a supporter he would be looking at a lot of different ways to get rid of Muslims in the U.S., maybe like rounding up millions, tearing their babies out of their arms, throwing the babies in icebox baby gulags, which is part of a larger concentration camp. But don't you dare call it a concentration camp, you Muslim socialist commie. Valerie Volkovici of Reuters brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. A conservation group sued the Trump administration for withholding documents related to its decision to cancel a 20-year ban on mining in a Minnesota wilderness area and open it up to copper production. Oh boy, I just love the smell of arsenic and mercury in the morning. It smells of poisoning my family for generations. Thank you very much. The Wilderness Society filed a lawsuit in a Washington, D.C. federal court to force the Trump administration to respond to 6 of their 24 FOIA requests for documents detailing its decision to open up the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness to sulfide or copper mining. The group requested FOIA records last September from the Department of Agriculture, the U.S. Forest Service, the Department of the Interior, and the Bureau of Land Management, but received no response because when you're deconstructing the administrative state for a hostile foreign power, you know the old saw. Oh, we'll get to it in just a moment. USDA Secretary Sonny Perdue announced last September that the Forest Service would cancel the ban on mining in the area and terminated the environmental impact study on mining in the Boundary Waters. We believe that the documents in question will confirm what we all know. which is that the science and public opinion definitively show that copper mining poses an unacceptable risk to this iconic wilderness area, Allison Flint, a lawyer for the Wilderness Society, said. Last month, the Bureau of Land Management renewed hard rock mineral leases in the watershed of the wilderness area. Conservation groups and, the wilderness area, the leases were leased to the Twin Metals Minnesota LLC, a subsidiary of Chile's Antofagasta. Oh, a foreign government gets to take our copper and our hard rock minerals. Thank you. The Canadian government also raised concerns about the impact mining could have on Canada's water quality and ecosystem, since the leases would be in shared U.S. and Canadian watersheds. Twin Metal CEO Kelly Osborne said the Trump decision to open up the area for mining was very good news for us and for the communities in northeastern Minnesota who look forward to the hundreds of jobs and major economic development this mine will bring, and the generations of death. And after the first few hundred jobs, we only need about 6 people to maintain it anyway. Well, that brings us to our break period. And not a moment too soon. And when we come back from that break, we are going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, such a timeless flight. With 2 rockstar biopics so close together this year, specifically director Dexter Fletcher and writer Lee Hall's Rocket Man following Bohemian Rhapsody, it's hard to resist comparing them. So I won't. Both feature 70s rock stars, both feature 70s English super rock stars, both invite us into their inner lives, taking us from their beginnings to their zenith, to their self-destructive nadirs, to their emergence from the graves dug by tremendous talent, wealth, pressure, and too little of the right kind of love. Speaking of which, both of those stars were queer and suffered from public and personal worlds that weren't ready to accept them as such. So, after Rhapsody has rocked you and convinced you that you are the champion, why see Rocket Man? Well, first, when Rocket Man opened with 7 or 8-year-old Reginald Dwight outside his house in Pinner, Middlesex, England, in the middle of a full-on neighborhood dance number to The Bitch Is Back, I thought, thank God, someone has decided to do a musical. Rocket Man plays off of shows like Mamma Mia and Jersey Boys that are built around a pop singer's canon, except Fletcher and Hall steep Rocket Man in broad fantasy moments, allowing for gripping visuals, explicit expressionism, and some really fun sequences. In this way, Rocket Man also owes not a little bit to Pink Floyd's The Wall, except Elton John's a real person who burned himself out on booze and drugs and sex. Like The Wall's fictional protagonist, John crumples when he looks for the love that he didn't get from his father's absence and his mother's affection sans acceptance, and only finds opportunistic coupling and fame's fleeting adoration. But most importantly, because of how Rocket Man really benefits from its framing device, because it's not afraid to be funny as well as mean, because we meet Mercury when he's already Freddie Mercury, but we meet John when he's just fat, shy little Reg, because Taron Egerton gives a beautifully bombastic yet vulnerable performance, we end up liking Elton and his movie more. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Annie Sneed. Plastic is lightweight, malleable, durable, but it has also become so widespread that it's ending up in a lot of unwanted places, including our own bodies. That's according to a new study which found that humans are consuming a shocking amount of so-called microplastics.
Microplastics, the kind of current working definition, is plastic less than 5 millimeters. So people commonly equate that to something like a grain of rice or a sesame seed and down in terms of size class. I will say that most of the microplastics that people are interacting with are quite a bit smaller than the sesame seed size, which I think always kind of shocks people when we start talking about the numbers, because they kind of can't, they can't see a lot of these things, at least with the naked eye.
Kieran Cox, a PhD candidate in marine biology at the University of Victoria in Canada, and one of the authors of the study, which is in the journal Environmental Science and Technology. Microplastics come from numerous sources. They can be shed from larger plastics, or they may have been designed small to begin with. Further study, Cox and his team pulled together past scientific literature that calculated the number of microplastics in things we commonly consume, such as in tap and bottled water, sugars, seafood, even in the air that we breathe. This analysis helped them figure out the baseline amount of microplastics that people are consuming every year. They couldn't include common foods like beef, poultry, vegetables, and dairy in their analysis because data on them doesn't exist yet. In fact, their study could only account for 15% of people's caloric intake. Even missing the majority of what people swallow, the research revealed that, at the very least, humans appear to consume somewhere between 74,000 and 121,000 microplastic particles every year. That number goes up for people drinking bottled water rather than tap water. Now, is all this plastic safe to ingest? Scientists simply don't know yet.
This is kind of the first estimate of dose, you could say, right? So if you're thinking in terms of toxicology and ecotoxicology, dose is a very important factor to think about. And so this kind of presents the first estimate, but it is very much a underestimate because of what we don't know.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Annie Sneed.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Heart disease and stroke can be catastrophic. They're leading causes of death, disability, and healthcare spending in the U.S., yet they're largely preventable. Alarmingly, heart disease and stroke are taking a toll on middle-aged adults 35 to 64, with over 800,000 deaths and hospitalizations in 2016. Million Hearts is a national initiative focused on preventing 1 million heart attacks, strokes, and other cardiovascular events by 2022. Coordinated actions by Million Hearts partners in communities, healthcare, and public health will keep people healthy, optimize care, and improve outcomes in populations at risk. Everyone has a part to play. Focus on the ABCs of heart health. A. Aspirin use when appropriate. B. Blood pressure control. C. Cholesterol management, and S, smoking cessation. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs. For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
More than half of workers age 50 or older will lose their long-time job before they are ready to retire, and almost none of them will ever earn as much again.
I'm Lily Ledbetter, and this is a Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
There is a whole language to cover corporate cover-ups of age discrimination against job applicants. No one tells an applicant, "You're too old." Nope. Now companies say, "You're too experienced." With ads that say, for example, persons with more than 7 years' experience need not apply. And then there's the hiding of available work, a scam where corporations target younger workers and potential employees with use of software and social media that exclude older people, so they never learn that there is a job. And, unfortunately, some courts have ruled that job applicants, unlike current employees, are not covered by the Age Discrimination in Employment Act. If you think that sounds nuts, you're not alone. Many believe that the ADEA covers applicants as fully as it covers current employees. But it probably will require a pro-employee decision of the Supreme Court to make that clear. As Paul Simon said in The Boxer,
asking only workmen's wages, I come looking for a job, but I get no offer.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1877. It became known in Pennsylvania labor history as the Day of the Rope. 20 Irish miners were hung for allegedly belonging to a secret group of labor radicals known as the Molly Maguires. The Mollies trace their history back to Ireland in the 1840s. The story goes that an Irish woman by that name stood up to the English landlords. Men fighting for Irish rights would declare themselves Sons of Molly Maguire. To what extent this secret organization actually operated in the United States is debatable. Irish workers who came to the United States often faced harsh discrimination. Many job sites would announce, "Irish need not apply." One place they did find work was in the often dangerous Pennsylvania coal mines in Schuylkill County. Franklin Goins, president of the Reading Railroad, controlled the mines in the 1870s. In late 1874, he announced a wage cut of 20%. The miners went out on strike. During the strike, the Mollies were accused of sabotaging the mines and even murdering mine supervisors. The mine operators quickly blamed any act of violence in the region on the Molly Maguires. Determined to infiltrate the Mollies, Gowen hired the notorious Pinkerton detectives. The Pinkertons sent in Irish-American James McParlin under an alias to attempt to join the group. Based on his testimony, 20 miners were hung for murder. They were found guilty even though much of the testimony presented in the case was inconclusive and contradictory. In 1979, the governor of Pennsylvania posthumously pardoned John Blackjack Kehoe, one of the alleged leaders of the Mollies. In 1970, Sean Connery starred in a movie based on the story.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
The New York Times broke an explosive story Thursday night, reporting that Donald Trump approved retaliatory military strikes against Iran, but pulled back from launching them. Officials told the Times that the president initially approved strikes on a handful of Iranian targets, such as radar and missile batteries. The operation was underway in its early stages when it was called off. Planes were in the air and ships were in position, but no missiles had been fired when word came to stand down. A particularly disturbing paragraph in the New York Times story reads, quote, "It was not clear whether Mr. Trump simply changed his mind on the strikes or whether the administration altered course because of logistics or strategy. It was also not clear whether the attacks might still go forward." Iranian officials told Reuters that Trump warned Iran overnight that a U.S. attack was imminent. According to the account, Trump conveyed his opposition to any war with Iran and a preference to talk with them, including an offer of a, quote, short period of time in which to receive their response. The official quoted by Reuters said Iran responded through Oman that the supreme leader was against any talks, adding a warning that, quote, any attack on Iran will have regional and international consequences. The tensions in the region escalated after 2 tankers were attacked earlier in the week, followed by Iran shooting down a U.S. drone on Thursday. Whether that drone was flying in Iranian or international airspace is in question. The Iranian's Revolutionary Guard said the drone violated their airspace, but U.S. officials disputed that, saying it was in international territory. Speaking to the press on Thursday, Trump both talked tough and seemed to be giving them a pass at the same time.
I think probably Iran made a mistake. I would imagine it was a general or somebody that made a mistake in shooting that drone down. I have a feeling that it was a mistake made by somebody that shouldn't have been doing what they did. I think they made a mistake. And I'm not just talking about the country made a mistake. I think that somebody under the command of that country made a big mistake.
And you're talking to Iran's leadership.
Let's just see what happens. Let's see what happens. It's all going to work out.
Are you saying you think it wasn't intentional to strike the drone?
I don't know. I find it hard to believe it was intentional, if you want to know the truth. I think that it could have been somebody who was loose and stupid that did it. But we'll be able to report back, and you'll understand exactly what happened. But it was a very foolish move. That I can tell you.
Trump invited congressional leadership to a meeting Thursday to discuss the situation with Iran. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer emerged from that meeting to give a quick statement to the press.
I told the president that these conflicts have a way of escalating. The president may not intend to go to war here, but we're worried that he and the administration may bumble into a war. We told the room that the Democratic position is that congressional approval must be required before funding any conflict in Iran. One of the best ways to avoid bumbling into war, a war that nobody wants, is to have a robust, open debate and for Congress to have a real say. We learned that lesson in the run-up to Iraq. We have an amendment supported by every Democrat to the NDAA in the Senate. It's led by Senator Udall. It would require congressional approval of any funding for a conflict in Iran. It's supported by all of us. We are asking Leader McConnell to do the right thing and give us a vote next week on the NDAA on that amendment.
7 Republican senators, including one of Trump's biggest defenders, Lindsey Graham, joined their Democratic colleagues in voting to block arms sales to Gulf nations. The bipartisan lawmakers wanted to express their continued displeasure with how the Trump administration has handled its response to the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, a journalist and critic of the Saudi regime. The administration last month bypassed Congress on the arms sale by declaring an emergency. Despite the Senate vote, it looks like the sale is going to happen anyway. Although the measure passed, it fell short of the 2/3 support needed to override an expected presidential veto. And finally, in yet another shameful episode, the government went to federal court this week to argue that it shouldn't be required to give detained migrant children toothbrushes, soap, towels, showers, or even a half-night's sleep inside Border Patrol detention facilities.
It's within everybody's common understanding that, if you don't have a toothbrush, if you don't have soap, if you don't have a blanket, it's not safe and sanitary. Well, wouldn't everybody agree to that? Do you agree to that?
Well, I think there's fair reason to find that those things may be part of safe and sanitary.
Maybe are a part. What do you say maybe? You mean there are circumstances when a person doesn't need to have a toothbrush, toothpaste, and soap for days?
Well, I think in CBP custody, it's frequently intended to be much shorter term. So it may be that for a shorter term stay in CBP custody that some of those things may not be required.
There are just no words. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. For more information, visit NicoleSandler.com/donate.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 56 degrees Fahrenheit, slated for a high of about 77, 78. Over the weekends, it looks like we're going to be in the upper 70s to low 80s, and overnight lows should be in the mid to low 50s. Currently, winds are light and variable out of the southeast. Will be shifting out of the north at 5 to 10 miles per hour in about an hour to two, and will continue at that rate overnight and also tomorrow, at least during the morning. Grass pollen is very high indeed, and the air quality index is good at 14 parts per million, though that daytime UV index remains very high at 9. Do take care. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.94 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity, I'm going to get it out, relative humidity is at 72%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 71 degrees and sunny. Paris is 72 degrees and sunny. Rome is 88 and sunny, and they finally have a heat advisory. Come on, Rome, I know you. You should have had that heat advisory about 82. That's where you usually have it. Kiev is 90 degrees and fair. Kabul is 75 degrees and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 85 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 75 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 46 degrees and fair. San Francisco, California is 57 degrees, mostly cloudy with a wind advisory. And New York, New York is 68 degrees Fahrenheit with rain. And, yes, you have a flood watch. Be careful. You got a lot of rain coming your way. Wow. All right, that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Tom Balforth and Gabriella Terrell-Farber of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. 6 beluga whales and 2 killer whales were transported, part of a 4-month operation to return all of their orcas to their natural habitat, as Russia began releasing a group of almost 100 captive whales into the wild, as they were held in detention in Russia's Far East since last year, and it caused an international outcry. Well, in detention. It looks like President Vladimir Putin's televised annual question and answer said, so he had his normal Q&A, and he said, we're releasing them. The plight of the whales, which were held in cramped conditions and were meant to be sold commercially, has captured imaginations around the world and prompted celebrities such as actor Leonardo DiCaprio to petition for the release. The Kremlin ordered local authorities in the Russian Far East to intervene months ago, but the problem of how to release them without causing them harm caused delays. Really? You captured them. You didn't care about harm then, but now when you want to release them, you're very careful. Indeed. The beginning of the release coincided with Putin's annual Q&A session, an event he uses to burnish his reputation, and which took on new significance this year as his popularity ratings have slipped. So he's going to bring some, Bread and circuses? Is this part of the bread and circuses? Could be. In a segment dedicated to the plight of the mammals, Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Gordiev said that the orcas would be taken back to where they were caught, something campaigners had insisted upon and released within 4 months in small groups. Putin welcomed the announcement, saying, "Finally, thank God, there is movement." The whales were caught by 4 Russian companies last summer and were meant to be sold to marine parks or aquariums in China before the law changed, outlawing such exports. Russia's FSB security service has brought charges against the companies for breaking fishing laws, and the Kremlin has said Russia had no direct ban on catching whales, but that they can only legally be caught in specific circumstances for scientific and educational purposes. And as the Japanese like to say, we're not eating these whales. We're just experimenting with them.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Matthew Green of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. British lawmakers will hold a citizens' assembly to gather views on how to meet the country's newly strengthened emissions targets. Parliament announced yesterday, Thursday, in response to a growing public unease over the climate crisis. Although the assembly, to be held over several weekends this autumn, would have no independent powers, legislators said its deliberations would inform broader discussion on how Britain can deliver on a commitment to reach net zero carbon by 2050. Well, if they can do Bodie McBodie or whatever that McBodie boat was, that was from Public Opinion, and that was actually for a good cause, though a weird name. I think that Public Opinion might have some sort of effect on moving consensus even further on the impacts of climate change, and we better do something damn quick. The rest of the world could care less what the America thinks, but damn it, we certainly use up a lot of carbon and push it up in the atmosphere, don't we? Well, we ought to stop that. At least not in the mass amounts that we're doing currently, and have been for quite some time. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and for the week. But you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on. We're going to meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie d'un novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.